The bone letter. The wind, a ceaseless sculpture of the valley of winds, sang a low, dry hymn across the dunes. It carried the scent of sun-baked earth and distant, decaying monsoon storms, sifting fine ochre dust into the very marrow of those who dared cross its expanse. Kaala moved through it like a ghost, his steps leaving barely a whisper in the shifting sands. His breath, a silent discipline of the Navikosha he'd once known, was an inward tide, slowing his heart, stilling his nerves, allowing him to melt into the shimmering air. He was a shadow amongst shadows, a quiet calculation moving across a land designed for grand, echoing gestures. Behind him, the others followed, each a finely honed instrument of subtle power. Ida, the Nadavansha spy, tracked not by sight, but by the faint, rhythmic pulse of the earth through the hollows of her anklets. She was a walking cipher, communicating in the intricate drum code of her lineage, a language of thrumming reeds and finger taps that spoke volumes where words would fail. Her silence was not a void, but a symphony waiting to be played. Agnidatta, the Agneya Sutra enforcer, was a stark contrast to their quietude. His presence was a contained inferno, a heat that seemed to ripple off his scarred skin. Half his face was a tapestry of old burns, a testament to the fire trials of his volcanic highlands. He moved with a heavy, purposeful gait, his gaze unwavering, his every muscle coiled with the promise of precise, unburdened force. Emotions to him were impurities in the execution of truth. And Bhumya, the earth listener, was less a man, more a part of the terrain. His tribal lineage, though extinct, had gifted him an instinctual connection to the land. He saw the world through mud resonance and foot vibration, reading the subtle shifts in the soil as others might read a scroll. His silence was absolute, a profound reverence for the whispers of the earth itself, communicating only through a sparse, deliberate language of signs. They were the Vratya Pathin, the Unnamed Ones, a secret cell resurrected by a wandering ascetic, an echo of the forgotten Chāyā-Yātrikas. Their mission to intercept a message courier, a seemingly simple task in a land where kingdoms dissolved not through armies but through whispers, and truth was as malleable as the sand beneath their feet. Vibration, low, slow. Bhumya signed, his fingers sketching the subtle pulse he felt from the ground. His eyes, dark and ancient, scanned the horizon, seeking not a visual anomaly, but a disturbance in the earth's quiet song. Kaala nodded, a subtle acknowledgement. He travels light and wary. His own senses, honed by years of living on the knife edge of perception, strained against the wind's current. He could almost taste the fear, the exhaustion on the air, a faint rasa veil, an emotional field left in the courier's wake. Ila's anklets chimed softly, a barely audible, intricate rhythm. Ahead, hesitation. The pattern shifted. Then abrupt stillness. Agnidatta merely grunted, his hand instinctively going to the twin iron rods strapped to his back, branded with his bloodline mark. The desert sun, a molten eye in the vast sky, beat down relentlessly, making the air shimmer with heat mirages. To Agnidatta, this heat was a familiar embrace, a truth-teller. They walked for another hour, the sun dipping lower, casting long skeletal shadows across the dunes. The Valley of Winds, true to its name, became a funnel for the evening gusts, whipping sand into stinging currents. Kaala led them towards a series of wind-sculpted rock formations, natural amphitheaters carved by millennia of erosion. It was a place where sound could be preserved in air pockets, where echoes lingered endlessly. A dangerous place for a courier carrying secrets. As they approached, a metallic tang, thin and sharp, cut through the dry air. It was blood, old and oxidized. Kaala's prana suspension deepened. He slowed his breath to a near halt, his pulse a phantom beat beneath his skin, making him all but invisible to any heightened sense, even his own. He moved like the wind itself, unseen, unheard. A fallen figure lay crumpled amidst a cluster of jagged rocks. The body was still, unnaturally so. No breath stirred the tattered tunic, no heartbeat resonated through Bhumia's listening stone. The courier was dead. Kaala knelt beside the body, his senses reaching out not just for the physical but for the lingering emotional residue, the faint psychic imprint left behind. The air around the courier was heavy with despair, a thick, cloying rasa veil, but beneath that, a deeper current, a fierce, desperate intent. This was not the death of a man merely ambushed, this was the end of a mission violently completed. Ila's anklets sang a rapid staccato rhythm. No struggle, no cry, too silent, too clean. Agnidatta, ever practical, knelt and began to examine the surrounding area. No obvious wounds, he rasped, his voice rough as grinding stone. No signs of a fight, just collapsed. He turned the body over with a practiced hand, exposing the courier's chest. And there it was. Not a wound inflicted, but a mark made. The courier's chest was bare, his tunic ripped open. What should have been skin was now a grotesque canvas. His ribcage, stark against the darkening skin, was not merely exposed, it had been meticulously, brutally carved. Kaala felt a cold dread trickle down his spine, a sensation he rarely permitted himself to acknowledge. The cuts were precise, shallow enough to avoid organ damage until the very end, deep enough to expose the bone beneath. And on those bones, painstakingly etched into the very framework of the man's being, were symbols. Not common script, but intricate, almost geometric patterns, like the fragmented pieces of a forgotten puzzle. They shimmered faintly in the fading light, imbued with a strange, dark energy. Mantric codes. Ila's rhythms vibrated with a sudden tension, not for voice, for bone. She leaned closer, her fingers tracing the air above the ribs, her ear cocked, listening for the silent vibration of the etched symbols. A curse, a confession, inscribed to resonate. Bhumia, typically stoic, emitted a low, guttural sound, a sign of deep discomfort. He pointed to the faint, almost imperceptible lines of mud resonance around the body. The earth remembers the pain, the truth.